Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. You follow the bite-sized tech news TLDR channel to get the fast facts.
Right.
You are busy, you need to get smart on the latest tech developments, and you rely on us to completely bypass the overwhelm of modern information overload.
Exactly.
But today, a story drop that is so massive, so fundamentally disruptive to the hardware landscape that a quick 2-minute video summary simply will not cut it.
It really won't.
We are taking that TLDR summary and, well, blowing it up. We are going to do the heavy lifting for you today, stripping down a massive new supply chain report to the absolute studs so you understand exactly what is coming. Today's source material is a recent transcript from our very own YouTube channel titled AirPods, The Next Big Leap. Inside Apple's secret camera rumors.
Yeah.
And we are talking about a highly detailed, incredibly persistent rumor that Apple is actively engineering a way to put cameras inside the next generation of their AirPods.
It is a concept that sounds, quite frankly, like a wild piece of science fiction.
Totally.
But the supply chain data backing it up is, it's forcing the entire industry to pay attention. We are looking at a fundamental reevaluation of what an earbud actually is.
Right.
For the last several decades, an earbud has been a passive audio delivery device, a tiny speaker you just shove in your ear.
Yeah.
But these leaks suggest a transition toward an active environmental sensing machine.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the crazy hardware specs, the leaked timelines, or the massive pushback from the tech community.
The skepticism is real.
Oh, absolutely. But we need to give you the absolute bottom line right now. Why does a camera in an earbud matter to you today? What is the immediate, real-world implication for the average professional if Apple actually pulls this off?
The bottom line comes down to a massive, unavoidable collision between unprecedented user productivity and catastrophic workplace security implications.
That is quite the collision.
It is. Let us look at the productivity impact first, because, well, that is what is driving the billions of dollars in research and development here. The core goal of this technology is entirely hands-free, completely frictionless interaction with spatial computing. Specifically, the Apple Vision Pro. If we look at the state of spatial computing right now, to interact with the virtual environment, you have to raise your hands, make deliberate pinch gestures within the field of view of the headset's downward-facing cameras.
And physically engage with the space in front of you.
Exactly.
Right, which causes what the VR industry has called a gorilla arm for years. You hold your hands out in front of you for long enough and gravity wins.
Yeah.
It gets exhausting.
It gets very exhausting. But if your AirPods have specialized cameras looking down the side of your body, you no longer need to raise your hands into a specific interaction box right in front of your chest.
Wow.
The productivity implication for a professional is the ability to navigate complex digital environments, manipulate 3D computer-aided design models, or manage half a dozen virtual screens while your hands are resting completely naturally at your sides.
Okay, loud on your desk.
Or even resting in your lap. It creates the ultimate invisible user interface. You are achieving maximum control of a spatial operating system with zero physical fatigue.
I can completely see the appeal of that invisible UI for a power user. That sounds incredible.
It does.
But the flip side of that bottom line is the security impact. And I want to push back on this a little bit because we already carry iPhones with high-resolution front and back cameras into boardrooms every single day.
We did?
We wear smartwatches. Why is putting a tiny sensor on an earbud suddenly this massive paradigm-shattering event for corporate security?
It is a great question. And the difference lies in the anatomical placement and the active nature of the scanning.
Okay, explain that.
When you walk into a highly confidential boardroom meeting or a secure research facility, your iPhone is typically sitting flat on the table facing the ceiling.
Right.
Or it is tucked away in your pocket.
Right.
It is a passive device unless you actively pick it up and point it at something. Standard earbuds, meanwhile, are totally ubiquitous. People wear them constantly.
Yeah, I have mine in half the day.
Exactly. They're essentially invisible to security protocols because, historically, they only process incoming audio.
They're essentially a blindfold for your ears. They do not see anything.
Precisely. But if those standard, innocent-looking white stems suddenly contain advanced camera arrays, you have inadvertently or intentionally brought a highly elevated, unobstructed spatial mapping device into a classified space.
Because of where they sit on your body?
Yes. An earbud sits at head height. It moves wherever you look. It has a commanding view of the documents on the desk in front of you, the keystrokes you're making on your laptop, and the proprietary schematics drawn on a whiteboard across the room.
That is terrifying from an IT perspective.
It turns a standard consumer audio product into a profound security liability because it's constantly scanning. Organizations will have to completely adapt.
Will we see AirPods thrown into Faraday cages?
Or lockboxes outside of conference rooms alongside smartphones. The bottom line is that this technology forces a complete rewriting of professional security protocols, simply because the definition of the hardware has changed from a speaker to a sensor.
That makes a lot of sense. The sheer subtlety of it is the actual threat.
It is.
So, with that bottom line established, let us really get into the mechanics of this. Our source text brings in a very specific claim from a highly regarded supply chain analyst, Ming-Chi Kuo.
Yes.
And his wording is critical here. He specifies that these are not standard webcams. He specifically calls them tiny infrared cameras. Why infrared? If Apple just wanted to put a camera on an earbud to see your hands, why not just use a standard tiny visual light camera like the one on the front of your phone?
Because a standard visual camera, an RGB camera, is fundamentally limited by human environmental conditions.
Meaning lighting.
Meaning lighting. Standard visual cameras require ambient light to function. They need photons to hit the sensor to understand what they're looking at. If you are sitting in a dimly lit office, or you are on a dark overnight flight, or you are simply sitting on your couch at night watching a movie on your Vision Pro with the lights off, a standard camera cannot track your hand movements reliably.
The image gets noisy?
It gets noisy, grainy, and the tracking algorithms just fall apart. Infrared changes the game entirely.
Wait, so if it's relying on infrared instead of standard visual light, does that mean I could be sitting in a pitch black room and it would still be able to read my micro gestures perfectly?
That is exactly what it means. Infrared captures heat signatures in depth rather than standard visual light. To understand how this works, think about the Face ID technology that is already on your iPhone.
Okay.
Apple has spent the last decade perfecting the miniaturization of infrared depth mapping. Face ID works by projecting an invisible grid of thousands of tiny infrared dots onto your face.
Right, that array in the notch.
Exactly. An infrared camera then reads the distortion of that grid, how the dots bend around your nose, your cheekbones, your jawline, to create a real-time, high-fidelity 3D topographical map.
So they are shrinking that.
The rumor here suggests Apple is taking that exact same core concept, shrinking the true depth camera system even further, and strapping it to your earlobe.
That is wild engineering.
It projects an IR grid downward, completely ignoring the ambient lighting conditions, and only cares about the physical geometry of your fingers.
So from a computational standpoint, is that actually easier for a tiny device like an AirPod to process? Because processing a full-color, high-resolution video feed just to find where a finger is pointing seems like it would require a massive amount of computing power.
It absolutely does. Processing raw video requires incredibly heavy machine learning algorithms to constantly parse out the background, identify the skin tones, find the hand, and track the joints.
A lot of heavy lifting.
A depth map generated by an infrared sensor is mathematically much simpler. It is just a matrix of distance values.
Oh, I see.
For a tiny device with a microscopic processor, infrared is the only logical choice. It provides unparalleled accuracy in recognizing shapes and movements with a fraction of the heavy computational lifting required by standard video.
And the phrasing used in the leaks to describe how these infrared cameras will function is incredibly specific. We have a quote in the source material from a leaker and prototype collector who goes by the handle Kosutami.
Yes.
They claim that the future AirPods Pro will be able to, and I quote, see around the wearer.
Right.
That wording, see around the wearer, suggests a massive departure from how we usually think about wearable cameras. Usually we think of a camera pointing exactly where we're looking.
Which is a profound shift in wearable sensor philosophy. A forward-facing camera, like the ones on a pair of smart glasses, only sees a narrow cone of what is directly in front of your face.
Right.
But the anatomical placement of an earbud is unique. It sits on the side of the head, protruding slightly from the ear canal. If you place a wide-angle infrared sensor on the stem or the outer casing of an AirPod, it is not just looking forward. It has a sweeping, unobstructed view down your body, across your shoulders, and out to your periphery.
Meaning both sides.
Exactly. When you combine the data stream from the left earbud and the right earbud, seeing around the wearer implies a near 360-degree spatial context.
That is amazing.
The system is constantly mapping the immediate volumetric space surrounding your entire upper body.
Which perfectly solves the biggest physical limitation of the Vision Pro right now. I was using a headset the other day, and I was slumped back in my office chair.
Okay.
I had a coffee mug resting on my chest, essentially blocking the headset's downward-facing cameras. Every time I tried to pinch my fingers to select an app, the headset completely lost tracking because my hands were hidden behind the mug.
The line of sight issue.
Yes. I looked ridiculous having to lift my arms up above the mug just to get the sensors to catch my pinch.
That is the exact friction point this hardware is designed to eliminate. The line of sight problem is solved by moving the sensors from your eyes to your ears.
Wow.
Your ears have a much clearer, wider view down the sides of your body and directly to your lap than a bulky headset strapped to your face does.
That makes total sense.
The source text explicitly states that these cameras are meant to recognize hand gestures to supercharge the Vision Pro experience. You are moving from a system that requires deliberate, performative gestures to a system that understands natural, resting body mechanics.
It sounds almost telepathic. You are sitting there perfectly still to an outside observer, but you are actually controlling massive digital environments with microscopic twitches of your thumb and index finger that are completely hidden from the people around you.
It is a brilliant concept.
It really is. But taking a brilliant sci-fi concept out of Apple's sterile testing labs and mapping it onto a realistic product roadmap is where this story gets highly complicated.
Very complicated.
Because looking at the leaked timeline in our source material, the math just does not seem to add up for Apple's usual strategy.
It is a massive temporal anomaly. Let us ground ourselves in today's date. Today is March 7th, 2026.
Right.
The source text outlines a very specific historical timeline for the AirPods Pro line. We had the debut of the AirPods Pro 2 back in 2022.
Okay.
Then we had the very minor USB-C charging case update in 2023. We have the heavily rumored standard AirPods Pro 3 slated for a 2025 release.
Which we are expecting soon.
And now, Ming-Chi Kuo is stating that this monumental hardware upgrade, these camera-enabled AirPods, is supposedly slated for 2026.
Which is an absolute head-on collision of product releases. You launch the Pro 3 in 2025, and then boom, just 12 months later, you drop a completely revolutionary hardware upgrade in 2026.
Exactly.
That completely breaks Apple's historical precedent.
Historically, Apple is an incredibly disciplined, methodical hardware company. They operate on very predictable tick-tock cycles.
Right.
For the AirPods Pro, it has traditionally been a 3-year cycle. They absolutely do not cannibalize their own flagship products just a year after launch, unless there is an overwhelming existential strategic imperative to do so.
So what is the imperative? Why panic and compress the timeline?
The urgency implies a massive internal recognition at Apple regarding the adoption curve of spatial computing. The Vision Pro is an incredible piece of technology, but the user interface, holding your hands up, dealing with occlusion from desks and coffee mugs, is a fundamental friction point.
The gorilla arm we talked about.
Exactly. It prevents the headset from becoming a true, all-day wearable computer. If Apple realizes that the success of their entire multi-billion-dollar spatial computing platform depends on having a completely effortless control mechanism, they cannot afford to wait for the standard 2028 release cycle for an AirPods Pro 4.
They have to move now.
They have to accelerate the timeline. They have to get these IR sensors onto users' bodies as fast as humanly possible to save the spatial computing vision.
And because of that compressed, panicked timeline, the leaker community is heavily divided on how Apple is actually going to package and sell this technology. We have two competing theories in the text regarding what this 2026 product actually is.
Yes.
Theory 1 comes from Kosutami, who believes this is simply the standard AirPods Pro 4. It will replace the 2025 model rapidly, likely staying at that standard $249 price point, serving as a baseline evolution for everyone.
Right.
But Theory 2 comes from Instant Digital, who suggests that Apple would never throw away their 2025 Pro 3 sales. Instead, this 2026 release is a brand new, significantly more expensive premium tier that would sit entirely above the current Pro model.
If we analyze the market data provided in the source, Theory 2 makes an incredible amount of strategic sense because it exploits a massive, glaring void in Apple's current pricing architecture.
Walk us through that void.
Look at their audio lineup today. You have the standard AirPods Pro sitting at $249. Then you have an absolute desert.
Nothing at all.
There's nothing until you hit the over-ear AirPods Max at an astonishing $549.
Right.
That is a $300 empty space.
Wow.
In the tech hardware world, especially for a company obsessed with capturing every possible demographic, leaving a $300 gap in your pricing tier is basically leaving hundreds of millions of dollars on the table.
Especially because, as the text points out, Apple is not operating in a vacuum here. That premium $300 to $400 space is fiercely contested right now. You have legacy ultra-premium audio competitors completely dominating that bracket.
They absolutely are.
Companies like Bang& Olufsen, Bowers& Wilkins, and Bose, they have established a really strong presence in the high-end earbud market.
And what do those legacy companies offer to justify a $399 or $450 price tag for tiny earbuds? They offer luxury materials, they offer hand-tuned acoustic drivers, beryllium components, and prestige branding.
Right.
They have proven that a specific subset of consumers is absolutely willing to pay way above the standard $249 Apple price point. Apple needs to capture that missing demographic, but Apple cannot necessarily out-pedigree a legacy audiophile brand on pure acoustic heritage alone.
Right. If Apple just releases a $399 AirPod that sounds 5% better, the average consumer will just stick with the $249 model. So how do you convince the market to jump up to that premium tier?
You introduce a paradigm-shifting computational feature. You don't try to beat Bowers & Wilkins with better acoustic foam. You beat them with silicon. A camera-enabled pod specifically designed to supercharge your Vision Pro experience perfectly fills that strategic vacuum. It justifies the premium price tag.
And leaves the base model alone.
Yes. It allows the standard Pro model to remain at $249 for the masses, generating reliable revenue, while the new, let's call it the AirPods Pro Ultra, slots in beautifully at $349 or $399.
That is a brilliant piece of market segmentation.
It allows Apple to aggressively compete with high-end audio rivals, not by making a slightly better speaker, but by establishing an entirely new category of wearable interface.
You create a new tier for the power users and spatial computing early adopters without alienating the massive mainstream audience that just wants good noise cancellation for their subway commute. But, as we know, building a brilliant product on paper or in a pristine Cupertino laboratory does not mean it survives contact with the real world. Reading through the community forums in our source material, the pushback against this concept is intense.
It hits a wall of practical reality.
Exactly. The source outlines 3 major pillars of skepticism. We have privacy, practicality, and power. Let us start with the first hurdle, the privacy crisis of wearable cameras.
The source quotes a user, HV Dynamo, who perfectly captures the baseline public sentiment right now. They wrote simply, "Please know I don't want cameras on everything."
Yeah.
That quote is profoundly important because it highlights an immense psychological barrier that no amount of slick Apple marketing can easily erase. There's a deeply ingrained, rapidly accelerating societal exhaustion with constant surveillance.
But again, to play devil's advocate, people said the same thing about Google Glass a decade ago. And now we have Ray-Ban Meta glasses with built-in cameras, and they are selling incredibly well.
They are.
People seem to be getting over the fear of wearable cameras if the form factor is stylish enough. Why would AirPods be the breaking point?
Because the nature of the device and the nature of the sensor is fundamentally different. When someone wears Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the camera is generally understood to be user-activated.
A little LED light turns on.
Right. You take a quick photo or a 30-second video of what you're looking at, and then the camera goes back to sleep. It is an active choice to record a specific moment.
Okay.
But the infrared sensors rumored for these AirPods are not designed to take photos for Instagram. They are designed to be an always-on, constantly scanning spatial mapping array.
They never sleep.
To track a subtle hand gesture, the camera cannot be asleep. It must be firing its IR grid continuously, processing the volumetric space around you every single second you wear them.
That makes the distinction incredibly clear. It is the difference between pulling out a camera to take a picture and walking around with a continuous 360-degree radar system attached to your head. And going back to the psychology of it, earbuds are worn much more intimately than glasses. They go inside your body. You wear them on the train, you wear them at your desk, some people wear them to sleep.
Yes.
To turn an auditory isolation device into a visual recording device feels like a massive violation of the established social contract of what an earbud is supposed to be.
Exactly. And think about the chilling effect this has on casual human interaction. If you are sitting across a cafe table from a friend or in a cubicle next to a coworker, and you know their white earbuds are constantly mapping the depth profile of the room, how does that alter your behavior?
You would definitely feel on edge.
Even if Apple publishes a 50-page white paper insisting that all the IR data is processed entirely locally on the device's H2 chip and never uploaded to the cloud, It almost does not matter.
It is the perception.
The perception of constant surveillance changes how humans act. People become guarded. They monitor their own movements. The privacy crisis here is not just about the fear of corporate data harvesting. It is about the destruction of unmonitored, relaxed physical space.
It is an incredibly heavy psychological burden to put on a consumer audio product. But even if we ignore the privacy nightmare completely, let's say the user just does not care, we hit a massive, unavoidable physical roadblock.
Right.
The second pillar of skepticism in our source text is all about the practical challenges of obstruction. We have a highly practical, almost obvious question from a user named 2bytes who asks, how are the cameras going to see through this? Are they going to see through your hair or if you're wearing a hat?
This is where the visionary sci-fi concept crashes headfirst into the immovable laws of basic physics. Infrared light is fantastic at mapping depth and completely ignoring shadows or low-light conditions.
But it is still light.
Exactly. It cannot magically penetrate solid, opaque objects. It cannot see through a dense layer of hair covering the ear. It cannot see through a thick winter beanie pulled down against the cold, or a hoodie pulled up over the head during a rainy commute.
If the camera lens on the stem of the AirPod is physically obstructed by hair or fabric, the entire spatial gesture control system just instantly collapses, right? The Vision Pro loses connection to your hand.
It drops to zero functionality instantly. So how can an IR sensor reliably track a microgesture near your waist if you have long hair draped over your ears?
It simply cannot.
Which leads to a fascinating, almost absurd question about Apple's user experience philosophy. Historically, Apple's core design tenet is that technology should seamlessly adapt to the user. It should remove friction.
Right.
But this physical limitation completely defines who this product is actually for.
Are they seriously designing a revolutionary interface that only works for people with short hair who live in warm climates and never wear hats?
Obviously, a company of Apple's scale does not design flagship hardware with such arbitrary, exclusionary physical requirements. But that means to utilize this technology, the device will demand entirely new behavioral habits from the user. It forces a concept we can call the subservient user. To use your spatial computer, you will actively have to ensure your ears are clear. You will have to consciously tuck your hair behind your ears every time you sit down to work.
Wow.
You will have to take off your hood, explicitly preparing and altering your physical appearance to accommodate the machine's line of sight.
That is a striking reversal of good design. Instead of the technology getting out of your way, you are forced to physically adapt your fashion and your body mechanics to appease the limitations of the sensor.
It creates massive daily friction.
It really does. But let us run a best-case scenario.
Yeah.
Let's say you have short hair. You never wear a hat.
Yeah.
You are sitting in a perfectly clear environment, and you do not care about the privacy implications. You still have to deal with the third pillar of skepticism, which is arguably the ultimate deal-breaker.
Yes.
The text points out the elephant in the engineering room. Cameras are absolute power hogs.
This is the hurdle that could completely kill the project.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at the raw engineering requirements, we see an almost insurmountable conflict in thermodynamics and battery chemistry.
Explain the math there.
The entire value proposition of modern AirPods is that they are tiny, incredibly light, and they last for hours on a single charge. The batteries inside these earbuds are absolutely microscopic.
Right.
We are talking about roughly 49 milliamp hours of capacity. They are meticulously engineered to sip power, performing two very low-power tasks: maintaining a Bluetooth audio connection and driving a tiny, highly efficient speaker driver.
And now you are asking that same tiny 49 milliamp hour battery to run a constant, always-on infrared camera sensor.
Exactly.
You're asking it to generate and emit an invisible grid of IR lasers, capture the reflected light bouncing back from the environment, run a local neural network on the ship to process that high-fidelity depth map in real time to find a hand, and then transmit that dense spatial data continuously to a Vision Pro headset.
It is a staggering technical demand. Running a continuous active scanning array threatens to completely decimate the expected battery life of the device. You simply cannot defy the physics of energy consumption.
Right.
Firing an IR emitter draws significant wattage. If an IR camera is constantly firing at 30 or 60 frames per second to look for hand gestures, the battery that usually gives you 5 or 6 hours of seamless audio listening might be completely dead in 45 minutes.
So how on earth does Apple solve that? Do they put a bigger battery in the earbud? Because if they make the AirPod heavier, it becomes uncomfortable to wear, which defeats the entire purpose.
They cannot make it significantly larger, which means Apple faces an impossible computational balancing act. They must either invent a radically new, profoundly efficient, low-power IR sensing suite that draws an infinitesimally small amount of energy,
Which might take years.
or they have to rely on incredibly complex predictive algorithms. Instead of the camera being always on, the earbud would use its accelerometers and gyroscopes to guess when you were about to make a gesture,
Oh, I see.
and only wake up the IR camera for a fraction of a second to confirm the hand movement.
But if they rely on a predictive wake-up system, latency becomes the enemy. If that camera wakes up even 10 milliseconds too slow, the interface feels laggy, disjointed, and broken.
Absolutely.
The magic of the invisible UI is completely destroyed if the computer hesitates every time you twitch your finger.
Exactly. The battery problem alone, balancing active scanning, processing power, and latency within a 49 milliamp hour cell, could be the exact reason this technology is delayed, heavily modified, or fundamentally altered before it ever reaches the consumer market.
So synthesizing everything we have unpacked today, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have looked at the incredible futuristic promise of hands-free spatial computing. We have examined the baffling, panicked 2026 timeline and the strategic $300 pricing gap Apple is desperately trying to fill. And we have stared down the massive physical, societal, and thermodynamic hurdles of putting cameras in our ears. It all brings us back to the ultimate question. Is this the critical missing piece required to unlock spatial computing for the masses, making the Vision Pro an effortless extension of our daily lives?
Or is it something else?
Exactly. Or is this just a frantic sci-fi solution desperately looking for a problem, one that creates far more physical and social friction than it actually removes?
When we distill all of this leaked source material down to its core, there are three absolute non-negotiable takeaways that you need to walk away with today.
Let's hear the
First is the tech. Apple is actively engineering the integration of active infrared cameras directly into the stems of their earbuds. The deliberate purpose of this hardware is to read subtle hand gestures, aiming to completely revolutionize how we control the Vision Pro headset by moving away from exhausting raised hand tracking to entirely invisible microscopic movements resting at our sides. Second is the market strategy. This camera technology is highly likely to launch a brand new ultra-premium tier of AirPods. It is a calculated strategic move designed to bridge the massive $300 pricing void between the current $249 Pro model and the $549 Max model.
filling that gap.
Yes, this allows Apple to aggressively compete with legacy high-end audiophile brands, not through better acoustics, but by introducing a revolutionary new spatial interface.
And the third.
And third are the core obstacles. This impending 2026 release faces massive, perhaps insurmountable real-world friction. It must overcome intense baseline consumer pushback regarding user privacy, corporate security, and the psychology of constant surveillance.
Right.
It must solve the basic physics of visual obstruction, where long hair, hats, and weather render the IR sensors completely useless. And finally, it must overcome the crippling battery drain associated with running constant infrared environmental scans on microscopic power cells.
Those three takeaways give you the exact framework you need to understand this evolving story as it breaks. And if you want to stay ahead of the curve as these massive supply chain rumors turn into retail reality, you absolutely need to be checking out the Tech News TLDR YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
They're doing the hard work of posting daily video updates, breaking down the minute-by-minute supply chain leaks, the patent filings, and the market analysis as these tech stories unfold in real time. It is the perfect, fast-paced companion to the heavy-lifting deep dives we do here on the podcast.
Before we sign off today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought built strictly on the premises of the hardware we have discussed today. We have established that if this technology ships, these earbuds are meant to be the primary eyes for navigating spatial computing through subtle, resting hand gestures. If this becomes the new global standard, if millions of professionals are walking around, sitting in cafes, or working in offices, manipulating massive, invisible digital worlds with micro twitches of their thumbs and index fingers, will the very way we move our hands in public permanently change?
That's a deep thought.
Will we slowly stop talking with our hands? Will everyday body language, the natural sweeping ways we express ourselves physically, be slowly eradicated and replaced by a highly rigid, highly specific set of micro movements?
Wow.
Are we looking at a future where our natural human expression is suppressed, turning our bodies into a secret digital control panel that only the machines understand?
That is an absolutely chilling yet entirely plausible concept to think about. If the machine cannot see through our hair, we move our hair. If the machine needs a specific pinch, we stop waving our hands. Are we training the machines to see us, or are the machines training us how to physically exist in the world? Thank you all so much for joining us on this incredibly dense, fascinating deep dive today. Keep asking those big questions, keep scrutinizing the broader implications of the tech in your pocket, or in this case, the tech invading your ears, and we will see you on the next deep dive.